So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give a short introduction about the project that I'm working on and where we're using a Wikibase instance for, and I'm also going to do a very short demo of how we upload our data using quick statements in the Photo Museum. So my name is Alexander. I'm a project associate at the Photo Museum in Antwerp. So, small introduction about the project. It's called the Gevard Photographic Paper Project. The idea is that the project is aimed at unlocking the photographic paper and documentation, photo packaging, and samples books in the collection of Gevard, which was a big producer of photographic paper and other materials as well. We aim to make these materials and all the related information about it accessible as open data. Together with our digital heritage expert Memo, I think Bart was or is also present today, we want to link the newly registered information to the collection of photo packaging and sample books already at FOMO. Thus, we want to create the first reference collection of that scale and diversity in Europe. It's a project in 3 phases from 2020 to 2023. The first phase was a research phase, which ended in August of this year. So it's the collections of packages that we already owned as a museum, plus the historical collection of Gevard that we acquired a couple of years ago as a museum. The second phase is further registration and digitization of the packaging and the archive materials, plus a further development of our Wikibase instance. In the third phase, we're going to focus on unlocking presentation and participation with cultural heritage communities. So why did we choose for Wikibase? Multiple reasons, but I'm going to highlight a couple of them. There's the possibility for extensive querying, as most of you probably know. It's simple to add multiple statements per property, which is also interesting for us as a museum. It's open source. The possibility of adding multiple data sources in one Wikibase repository. So the idea, for example, could be that we now have data of photographic paper inside of it, but if we, for example, map other databases that we have one which is quite famous, which is the Directory of Belgian Photographers. If we would map that into our Wikibase, then we could, connect that data with the data that's already in there from the photographic paper. And in theory, in the end, in many, I don't know at what time, but it would be cool if we could link which photographer used which photographic paper, and etc., etc. And maybe then also connect that to items that we have in our collection as a museum. We also have control of ontology, and we're not dependent on the Wikidata community. So this means that why we're using Wikibase instead of Wikidata, basically. How do we upload data? We use quick statements. There are, of course, other ways, like Python, but for the amount of data that we at the moment have, for us, it's easier to just use quick statements. Also, we are not that technically evolved yet, as some people here are, so we are, doing it one step at a time. The 2 versions that you see here on the left, you see the command sequence syntax. We find that a bit more difficult to transfer our data into this kind of model, so we use the CSV syntax, which you see on the right. And I'm going to show you immediately how we do it. I'm going to open my Excel here. So I'm gonna, I think, I have to do it like this. Voilà. So we start from the data that we, of course, already have, which is a messy Excel file. The first thing you do is you normalize and you add your data, which makes sense. I think most people know that. What we then do is we start, start adding the properties as a column header to know what where it needs to map to. Then we also add the relevant. If you have to look up which queue number you have to add for which item, because you have to end up with a nice clean where for every item you have the relevant queue number. So, and then most of the time you end up with something like this. So here you have like the QID if you already have them. Otherwise, you can just leave them empty. The label, description, and then all the properties. And then for some, you have if you have an item for this, you can enter the item. If you don't, you can enter a string value or a number or any other things. All the different types of data are also mentioned in the manual that I will link also later, and you can access easily online. So I will just to show you quickly how it works. Basically, yeah, it's a bit tricky in the study of a bit. How do you say this? Yeah, there's a bit of a workaround to it. So when you have something like this, when you're ready with your CSV file, you first have to save it as a CSV. So which I'm going to do very quickly now. At my desktop. All right, then you then that was sorry. Then you open it with I have to open it with Notepad++ because there's some problem with the punctuation. So you have to switch all the point commas with regular commas. So you do replace everything. Wait, why is it? There. Then you also have this thing that I will talk more about later. When you have string values, you have to enter often these quotation marks, which is something that's also explained when you have to use them, how many you have to use them on the in the manual on Wikidata. But so you just have to. So, and then. And then I'm just going to show you. So once you've figured this out, yeah, here, for example, these are string values. So I have to have 3 quotation marks in the beginning and the end. So I will just show one upload, item, an upload of one item and its relevant statements. Once you have this, you just copy all the headers plus the amount of items that you want to upload. But in this case, I'm just going to do one. You copy this, then you go to your browser. Voila. This is the quick statements access point on our Wikibase instance. You enter new batch, you just copy it in here. And then you say, oh, comments. Why is it so? Yeah, so you just import it. Oh, wait, no, it's coming. On the wrong one, so you have to. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous. So one more time, you copy it here, then you do it import the CSV commandos. Then, if it's correctly done, you can see here the label, description, and the statements you have done. Then you just press start, and hopefully all the code is done. And then you can see, okay, voila, these are all done. So if you would then go to this item in the and you can see it's Q4 no, it's Q495, and then you will see that it has uploaded all the items. Now I've done some of them double, and I see that I've even done a small error with some of the quotation marks. So I will immediately go back to my presentation because that's one of the issues that we have. If I go back to here, so you see again the method that we have used this. So the normalization, filling the headers, replacing items with key numbers. Yeah, that's also another thing, that every empty value should become a sum value, because you can't. That's one of the issue. I'm just going to come back to that later. Export as CSV and check punctuation, and then the upload. And here you can find the manual. So the issues that we have I'm going to first start with the some value and the no value. So it's not possible to skip a certain value, which is a bit annoying, or not, at least not with this kind of upload. So what you do is you create a some value, because if you do no value, that means that it does not have, it's not supposed to have a value for that certain property, which is often not what you want, but you just don't have this value right now because you're going to add the data later. So then you put in some value. Also a bit annoying that with item creation, it's not a possibility. There is no possibility to use some value. So when you create a new item, you first have to do everything without a some value, and then you have to do another one where you have so it's a two-step upload where you can add the some value items. The data units are not native to Wikibase, so you have to create your own units as separate qualifiers. Constraints are not possible or not native possible in Wikibase. You can, which is also annoying at the moment. Yeah, input per language, but that's something, unfortunately, that's always going to be a problem, and I think. And then no native support for open refine reconciliation. Then of course you can. I know a lot of people use like external wrappers and these kinds of things, but that's something that I still have to look into. So I haven't gone to the yet. Anyways, I'm seeing that I'm already on time, so I'm just gonna stop here. Thank you very much for listening and seeing. Sorry for my nervousness. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. I see that in the Etherpad, or there was one question in the chat that's about this quotes thing in quick statements version 2. Somebody's asked if you know where that is explained.
Yes, it is completely explained on the link that I can put the link also in Etherpad later.
That would be great.
It's explained here on the here you have like the complete CS file syntax, how you have to do it, and then they say also why you have to use these and when you have to use them. But sometimes I still, because now I also did it very quickly, and I still had an issue with some of them, as you could have seen. But normally you just have to check it, and then it's not that difficult. You just have to pay attention to it.
Thank you. There was another question about quick statements being part of Wikibase, and this was already answered in the chat, so we'll skip that one. And I see that somebody is now currently writing another question, which we have the time to answer before the end of the session. Is there a tool for direct tabular input from a spreadsheet that does the quick statement translation?
As far as as far as I know, not, because that's what I then do myself. I map it to the with the headers with the relevant properties and with the description or with the label or whatever. So yeah, as far as I know, no, but maybe there is, and I don't know about this. You have it though in Open Refine, but then you have to have that's only valid, I think, for Wikidata, not for your own Wikibase instance, because you do have it with Open Refine, but I don't know if that's possible with a local Wikibase instance.
There are suggestions that you should join the next session that's on Open Refine, and to ask of this question should also probably join this next session.
I will definitely join the next session.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions. If anybody would like to unmute themselves to quickly and ask a question, then we can do that. Otherwise, I would say thank you so much, Alexander, and we can start the next session in a minute. All right.
Everyone, you're tired of the sound of my voice, I know.
No, we're happy to have you back.
But I hope this will be super interesting. And this time, of course, because I really don't want to talk forever.
And that was just an excellent natural segue into this session, given the questions about Open Refine.
Obviously, I did the curation really well. No, I'm joking. I had no idea that Alexander will segue into Open Refine. Also, I'm very happy that I have my lovely colleague Lucia to help me talk, so I don't, I don't need to talk for the whole time. And I will turn on my camera and screen share in a second.
Yes, have you got the necessary moderation permissions to share your screen? Yes, you do.
I have done this already.
You know what you're doing. I will let you take it from here.
Yeah, it's been a fun couple of days. Sorry, just turning on the camera as well. Okay, so I think we're on time and we're recording, so brilliant. Thanks, everyone. This presentation will talk about how at TIB we're currently using OpenRefine with arbitrary Wiki-based instances, and I hope we'll answer many of the questions that came up in the previous session. So, although I think a lot of people in the community know that this is possible, the question of how to connect actually OpenRefine to arbitrary instances comes up a lot in the Telegram chats. I have personally written the same things like multiple times. So here is the 3 steps to connect, I think, ultimate slide. I hope I'm not missing anything. And if I am, Sandra, please do interrupt me and say so. But the first step that you need is to set up the reconciliation service for OpenRefine on a private server. Yes, indeed, it does not come with your regular Wiki-based distribution in Docker. However, obviously, there's instructions how to do it. So as long as you have someone in your organization, with a little bit of sysadmin experience, it should be totally possible to do. The second step, very important, is to provide a manifest for your Wiki-based instance. And in theory, you can provide it either as a file or as a URL, but Lucia will highlight some tricks about this in a moment. There is a tutorial and example JSON files, for example, the Rhizome one, available at this URL there. And I will also paste the slides in the Etherpad in a moment. The Rhizome one I always used as an example because I think we maybe are the Rhizome instance was probably the first one to trial this, like already over a year ago, even before the beta was released. And the third step is you need to create, this is also kind of important, that it's not documented anywhere as far as I know, but you need to create a tag OpenRefine 3.5 in the special tags in your wiki, and that's kind of how your uploads will then appear in the wiki instance. And yes, all of this only works with the 3.5 version of OpenRefine, so you have to, yes, I see comments in the chat. I can make this somewhat official documentation. Maybe I'll post this somewhere in comments. You don't need a 3.5. We have just this week, I think, was released a new version of the beta, so please go and get that. Another kind of neat thing that we can share now as part of our work at TIB with NFDI for Culture, Task Area 1, we made a little service box for automated deployment. This was done also with some help from Antonin, who is lead dev on OpenRefine, and I see here in the chat. And this is open on GitLab, so anyone should be able to go and kind of make it, take advantage of our code there. I'm going to maybe not explain this super well because this was done by my colleague Andre Castro, who is really excellent at all of these DevOps operations. But the basic structure is that we use an Ansible Playbook to automate the installation and configuration of the OpenRefine reconciliation service, and also generating the manifest that you need for your Wikibase. It's employing a Vagrant box, and the process is done in a local box for, in a local virtual machine for testing with Vagrant, and then it can be deployed with GitLab CI. And yeah, we deployed on multiple machines at TIB. You can see our kind of pipeline on the right-hand side of the slide here. It's kind of very efficient and easy. And we also figured out that we can indeed run multiple OpenRefine instances on one virtual machine. So it makes it kind of quite convenient and efficient. And at the moment, we are connecting these with various Wiki-based instances on WB Stack. So shout out also to Adam for the WB Stack support there. This is an example reconciliation service API if you want to see that. Yeah, the link should be in the slides. I wonder if there's anything kind of worth highlighting. Maybe I'll keep going because it's more interesting to see the live demo actually. And we have an example manifest file. I would like to note that there are some, I think, slight differences. So if you're using WB Stack, it's probably best to look at these example files for guidance. If you're using a regular Wiki-based Docker distribution, you can check out the links here that showcase some examples from Rhizome. I think that's a more standard way of doing it. And I think I will stop here and I'll hand over to Lucia, who will do a live demo now of how we use this.
Yes, and this is very live. I haven't actually tested the part that I'm going to show, so that I can do it now. Okay, this is the right screen. Okay, so I'm going to show you what you need to do once you have set up all the backend, because you do need to connect your client version to the Wikibase. So the first thing is basically click on extensions, Wikidata, and then you can select which Wikibase instance you want to use. Right, and you can see I've already added one, but let's try to add another. So simple, just click on Add Wikibase. And then you have two options. So you can either paste the manifest URL here, or you can paste the JSON text directly. And so this is for now our recommended version, because there are some problems. I don't know which ones, but basically the URL version might not work. So I actually have the manifest open here. So let's copy it, paste it, and see if it works. Right, okay, so it did work, and so now we just choose the Wikibase that we want to work with, close that window again. And then there's one more thing which we can, yeah, so it might have already worked, basically. So we need to add the reconciliation endpoint, because if we want to work with the Wikibase, we also have to use reconciliation. And so the last time I did it, it actually got added automatically once I added the Wikibase instance. So let's see, yeah, so it's right here. But if that doesn't work, then you can just click on Add Standard Service and enter the services URL, which you have set up before. Okay, so yeah, those are basically the two steps that you need to do. And now you can just use it like you would use Wikidata, except, of course, but you know that you have set up your own Wikibase, so you also have to set up everything, like all the properties, the classes, whichever you need. So, of course, this is a bit more difficult than Wikidata, but yeah, I think if you are setting up your own Wikibase, then maybe this is something you want to do anyway. So now I just want to show one neat thing where you can basically use data from different Wikibases for your Wikibase. And so you can actually reconcile your data against Wikidata. So the data that I'm using is just a table I made up of famous artworks and famous artists. So I'm going to reconcile the artists against Wikidata. And yeah, let's hope this works. And then we can, right, yeah, I'll just choose the ones at the top, because it doesn't really matter if it's right or not. But so now you can actually use Wikidata to add some data or to enrich your own data. And you can do this by clicking the button, go to edit column, add, and then add columns from reconciled values. And then you can add whatever you want, maybe the occupation, let's add the place of birth. Right, so you can see here the preview if it looks right, and then you just get another edit table. Okay, and I think we did say that the session features a live upload. I don't know if we have time for that. And also,
let's try it, because I think we have the 5 extra minutes, and if there are questions, I can answer them in the chat. Okay, let's try. So, right, now that, so I've reconciled this against Wikidata, and of course, I need to clear that because I want to add some data to my own Wikibase, to this one. And I think, so I don't know if people who are here have used OpenRefine before or not, but basically, if you want to create a new item, you have to reconcile it before, and then you can create, I think you can create new items actually before that, but I always do it this way. So we create a new item for each cell. And now I can create an item. Right. Yeah, I see I actually made a mistake with the data, because now the column names are the actual values. But
Okay.
No worries. This is live. It's all good.
Exactly. Creation of creation. Yeah, I think I haven't actually added property for place of birth, but let's just use this one. And I also need to reconcile this data. Okay, yeah. I don't know. Yeah,
sometimes you need to refresh your. I found that, especially with the beta version, you need to like refresh your browser window, and then it will be fine. But
try that. No. Yeah, we can just upload just the artist then. And you can see this is a very simple upload. We will just have artists, and their label is just the name of the artist. And the upload basically works the same way as with Wikidata, I think. So you just go to upload edit, then you need to log in. This thing. Right, and so basically just the same as with Wikidata. You log in, and then you're automatically connected, and then you can just upload the edits. And sometimes this can take a bit longer, so let's see, maybe we can field some questions and wait for the edits and then show them. Yeah.
There is one question in the Etherpad, which is, how do you get a manifest for your Wikibase instance?
Well, if you go to our GitLab, you can run our Ansible Playbook, and that will automatically make it for you. Otherwise, you can literally write it by hand. It's a JSON file. I've written the first ones we used last year by hand. It's very simple to write. You just have to follow the formula, right, that Antonin has established. I don't know. This is maybe like the layman answer, but I've done it by hand. It's totally easy. But obviously, like, you can automate it with our Ansible Playbook if you are more technically advanced. Maybe it's also interesting to pick up this thing that David mentioned in the chat. I think it's useful to know that the reconciliation against the custom Wikibase works also without the manifest. So doing only step 1, the resulting CSV that has then has to be imported by other means, I suppose, like quick statements, which, yeah, I'm sure it works. And maybe, I think we have 2 minutes. I could mention that I have done some experiments. What can you do if you don't have an OpenRefine reconciliation service? How can you still kind of use it to export, useful, like quick statements formatted, ready formatted data? And I found like kind of 2 workarounds. One is, if you are okay to live with federated properties from Wikidata, you can use the federated properties from Wikidata, and then the properties at least will be correct. You might want to tweak some things manually afterwards, but you can basically, using properties from Wikidata and sort of like forcing to create rules around like maybe making new items, you can create a pretty useful sheet that you can then export for quick statements and upload it. Or alternatively, you could kind of cheat and use like P numbers from Wikidata again that match the P numbers in your Wikibase. But this may be going too much into the kind of hackier way around this. But I would like really, I basically never write quick statements by hand or anything like this. I always use OpenRefine in some shape or form. And then, yeah, upload either with quick statements, or I also love this upload that Lucia showed with, directly from OpenRefine, obviously, more smooth workflow.
Unfortunately, we're at time. It's already past. Some of the questions are in the Etherpad. It would be great if you could write written answers. Otherwise, I want to thank both of you for an awesome session. I hope that some of the people that asked the questions earlier also got to see that session and got some of their questions answered. Jeroen, are you around? Oh, no, we have to refresh the screen again. Okay.
No, I think we don't need to refresh, right? Because we were going
Oh,
to
there's no refreshing.
Yeah, we're running them
True.
on. So Jeroen can just go online. Yeah.
Jeroen, are you around and ready to share your screen? Yes. I can't hear you. Can you see your screen there? Still can't hear you if you are trying to talk. Jeroen, I can't hear you. You're not already talking, are you? Okay. Are you doing something in the background and need a minute or two? You're not sure.
Sarah, maybe you can stop. You can pause the recording just for a second. And Jeroen, I think if you just...
And we can also see your screen. This is
Hello?
looking promising.
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
The stage is yours.
All right. So this is an Edtf date inside of a Wiki-Based statement. And this is a locally uploaded image in another Wiki-Based statement. Both of these are made possible via our new Wikibase extensions. And in the next 10 minutes, I will introduce you to 3 of them. I am Jeroen de Dauw. I am one of the original Wikibase and Wikidata developers. I worked for Wikimedia Deutschland until 2019, at which point I started my own MediaWiki company called Professional Wiki. We provide various Wikibase services, including hosting, development, and support. So I will be presenting 3 different extensions here, and all 3 of those are completely open source, meaning that you can freely download them and install them on your own Wikibase. The first extension is called Wikibase Edtf, and this one was funded by the Luxembourg Ministry of Culture. Edtf stands for Extended Date Time Format, and this is an ISO standard which was published by the US Library of Congress in 2019. It allows you to express a number of things that you cannot do with the standard Wikibase date type. For instance, you can represent intervals, and here the notation is starting date / ending date. So for instance, you could represent the start day and the end day of a conference with an interval, and do that with a single value inside of Wikibase. And that way you need a single property rather than needing 2 different ones. Edtf also supports precision and uncertainty. It supports seasons, and it supports sets. Sets basically being lists, and there are 2 different kinds of sets. The first example here has square brackets, and that means it's a single value inside of the set. And the second type of set is all member sets, and these are denoted with curly brackets. This Edtf extension will validate the user input, so ensuring you have only valid Edtf dates inside of your Wikibase. And it also shows this interpretation of the date, which is localized, and it is there to help users that are not familiar with Edtf notation. This extension is stable. It has been released, and it's ready for production usage. You can find download, installation, configuration, and usage instructions on our GitHub in the README file. This will be linked later on. The one gotcha here is that not all the tools in the Wikibase ecosystem support this new type yet. On to the second extension. This one is called Semantic Wikibase, and it was funded by Frans van der Horst. It allows you to connect Wikibase to Semantic MediaWiki by automatically storing all Wikibase data in Semantic MediaWiki. And this gives you access to a whole bunch of capabilities that come with Semantic MediaWiki and its ecosystem, including inline queries and visualizations, which we will have a look at in a moment. But since not everybody here is necessarily already familiar with Semantic MediaWiki, I will give you a super quick introduction. Semantic MediaWiki is quite similar to Wikibase in that these are both MediaWiki extensions that add structured data capabilities. It was created in 2005 by Marcus and Danny, who you might be familiar with, since Danny created or started the Wikidata project, and Marcus was also involved. This software is used on thousands of wikis, including big companies and nonprofits. There are over 30 extensions, and some cool features it has are form-based editing and this inline queries and visualizations. So here we have a nice Wikibase item about the city of Amsterdam. It has a label, it has a description, it also has two statements, one with the located in property and one with the coordinates property. And what we have here is UI provided by Semantic MediaWiki, and it shows which information is stored for item Q16. So that's the one we just looked at. So it shows the information that's stored in Semantic MediaWiki for this item. And here you can see that the coordinates property and located in are both present. And the same goes for the item ID, description, and label. So since this is now stored in Semantic MediaWiki, we can do this inline queries and visualizations. So here we have our main page that we're editing, and we are adding two inline queries to it. The first one is just getting all the coordinates and displaying them on a map. And the second one is getting some additional information and displaying everything in a table. And this is the output of these queries. So I want to highlight here that this is directly in the wiki page without needing any additional tools. This particular extension is still in beta, so it will need some more development for serious production usage, though the core functionality does work already. Then the third and final extension is Wiki-Based Local Media. This one was funded by our friends at Rhizome, and it allows you to work with locally uploaded images inside of your Wikibase. Once you have this extension installed, you will be able to create the Wikibase properties that have the media file type. And this works very similar to the native Commons media file type. This includes auto-completion of the locally uploaded images when editing, including the file name and the image. And then once you save those, again, like with Commons Media, you will get the image shown directly on the item page. This extension is also stable and ready for production. So similarly to the Edtf extension, not all the tools in the ecosystem support the new data type yet. This concludes this short overview of our two new Wiki-based extensions. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Jeroen. There are no questions in Etherpad right now. I wondered if some people have some questions and they want to unmute themselves. We still have about 10 minutes left for this session. So if people have some questions, they're welcome to unmute themselves and we can have a conversation. Or if you're feeling camera/microphone shy, you can also just post your questions and I can read them out loud.
Yes, I didn't mention that. Indeed, local media will be included in the Docker release, if I'm not mistaken, and I think the same is also true for Edtf.
I would have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go for it, Dragon.
Yeah, so you mentioned that some tools do not support the extensions. Where would you like to see the tool support, or where have you seen like feedback from users of these extensions that the tools that they would like these tools to be supporting these extensions? I mean, apart from
Yeah, so in most cases, it's relatively easy for tools to support this new data types, but a little bit of work is needed. So the tool authors need to be aware that some change is required and need to put in a little bit of effort. In case, for instance, for local media, for Rhizome, you wanted these images to show for the query service UI. And we created a patch for that, but the maintainers haven't acted on that. And Dragan, you also did some work there. So it is nice if these things end up in the main line.
Yeah, and how does it go with like OpenRefine and so forth?
Well, that's difficult.
That would be a very important like point in the toolchain.
So I personally haven't tried these things with OpenRefine. The issue there with this new data types is that there is this whole ecosystem of extensions that somehow interface with Wikibase, and it's often not clear which assumptions that these tools make and which things that they hard-coded. So yeah, I cannot tell to which degree these work with OpenRefine at the moment.
Thanks, awesome.
Anybody else that would like to unmute themselves and ask a question? In the meantime, there is also a request for sharing the slides. Jeroen, would that be possible?
Yes, where should they be shared?
In the Etherpad would be great. I'll post the link in the chat again. Thanks.
So Adam asked if the Edtf ends up in the query service. That's another case of an external tool that we need to deal with. And there we had the option, either we modify BlazeGraph and add Edtf support there, which would be a relatively big project. So we decided to not do that and instead export a simplified version of the Edtf. So for instance, for a set, we will export each date in there as a standard Wiki-based date. That way we don't need to modify the query service. But yeah, this is a compromise, and there's definitely still things there that can be improved. This is also documented in the README, exactly how we do the simplification for RDF.
We still have a few minutes left, so if people want to unmute themselves and we can move this conversation from the chat to the stage, so to speak, then feel free to do so.
Jeroen, you also have an extension GND created recently and didn't talk about that one. How's that related to the other extensions?
That's Wiki-based work that we're doing for the German National Library, but it is pretty domain specific, so it's not helpful to you unless you are working with the GND. So
I am, that's why I'm asking.
We do anticipate that in the near future, or it seems likely that some general purpose Wiki-based tools will come out of that project.
I'll get back to you on another channel on that one. I think that's interesting.
So there was another question in the chat about Edtf fallbacks. So yes, if you have 2021 XX21 as a date, it will indeed be simplified. I don't know by heart what it will be simplified to, but it will be simplified. In case of uncertainty, generally the uncertainty is just dropped since we cannot represent that inside of